are live, I hope. Are we live? Are we not live? Yeah. We'll go ahead and assume that we are live. Welcome to my channel. I'm the Dark Lord of Optics, and what I bring you here is a thinking man's take on guns and optics with occasional forays into politics. Thank you for being here. This is the third installment of the Guns of the Dark Lord series. I've been kind of lax in continuing with this primarily due to extensive work travel, lack of time, and a variety of other convenient excuses. I'm really good at excuses. More of an explanation. Let's go with an excuse. Quite a long time ago now, I ran a poll on what kind of a gun platform you'd like me to use for the next Guns of the Dark Lord series, and the consensus was that it's going to be an AR-15. Not necessarily a bad thing, because I have a good number of AR-15s. I'm very well familiar with the platform, and I spend a lot of time with it. However, choosing one was rough, and it came down to two, and I finally decided to settle on this one, and this is sort of my general purpose AR-15 that's set up for everything from 5 yards to 900 yards. Everything about this gun was set up to be a general purpose platform. It is here in front of me. Fair disclaimer, the bipod is here temporarily. I'm planning to go take a rifle marksmanship class at front sight with this gun in about a week, hopefully. I'm supposed to go with my brother. He's not feeling too well, so we'll see if I go or not. But the way that the class is structured, they recommend having a bipod on it, so I attached a Magpul bipod to see if it'll work well for me. I don't have too much mileage with this bipod. The slow lever from Apex, what's it called? I think they're called Apex Defense now, or something else, don't remember. They changed their name a couple times, makes all the difference, seems to work reasonably well. Where I'm making this right now, at the range where I shoot, we have a tunnel. It's stupid windy today. There's no way I could get anything remotely resembling decent sound outdoors. And even indoors, there is enough wind coming in through the door where I think the camera is moving, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully the video is not going to be too shaky. But anyhow, so what is this AR-15 that you see in front of me? I'm kind of going to go through the components and then talk about it a little bit. The upper and lower receiver are perfectly standard. There's nothing unusual about them. The lower is a billet design. I bought it when you couldn't find anything else. Slightly heavier than I'd like, but that's really fine. The upper is just a normal Bravo manufacturing upper. I like the fact that they make the tenon up front where the barrel fits a little bit tighter, so that's a nice consistent hold in the barrel. That seems to make a little bit of a difference. I don't know. Maybe perceived, but it's fine. The stock is an Ace ultralight stock. I use these quite a lot. It really helps with recoil recovery. ARs don't kick much to start with, but they do kick, and I sort of learned to appreciate the fact that as a rifle buffer and spring give me slightly lower recoil. In this stock is super light, and I like the neoprene sleeve. It seems to work well for me. I do have a single point attachment here that I don't use that much. Normally I use a 2-point sling. This is the RS-3 sling from a company called Riflecraft. It's one guy who is a spectacularly good shooter, and he's got a couple of sling designs that I really like, and I use this sling on a lot of different platforms. I could probably do a video on it, but I think he has already a Riflecraft RS-3 sling. The barrel is the carbon fiber barrel from Proof Research. I'm generally not super bullish on carbon fiber barrels. Most of them, as they heat up, start changing point of impact and all that sort of stuff. And ultimately, the same diameter steel barrel from a good manufacturer will generally shoot better. I mean, with Proof Research, from my experience, all steel barrels shoot better than the more expensive carbon fiber barrels. But for this particular build, what I was going for was general purpose use. So I was willing to save a little bit of this ultimate precision, give up a little bit of this ultimate precision for a lighter gun. And on an AR-15 that will be used offhand a good bit, and I shoot this offhand quite a bit. For an AR-15 like that, I want the balance to be in a very particular spot, meaning right around the magazine well, right? So this is sort of like so right at the front of the magazine well is where the balance point of this gun is. And that's really what I want you to maintain. It's very hard to do so with a steel barrel unless you go to a pencil barrel design, and then you start giving up some accuracy. So proof research was more or less my best option. Handguard took me a little while to converge on. I've tried a ton of different handguards on it, and I finally ended up just taking a 12-inch handguard from Q. I've talked about Q before. I like this stuff. It's a nice, simple M-lock handguard. The way they do the attachment and the barrel nut, I think, is very clever. It's nice and seamless. Nothing sticks out. There are no cross bolts, nothing like that. I have several of these on different guns. They work really, really well, so I stick with that. The gas block, which is sort of important in this case, the gas block here is the Odin Works. It's a tunable barrel. They call it tunable, not adjustable. The way it's designed, you basically tune it once, leave it alone, and leave it with that. The bolt is perfectly standard. The bolt carrier, however, is the adjustable variety from a company called, it starts with B. It'll come back to me momentarily. But it's an adjustable bolt carrier, so I generally don't run a suppressor on it, but if I choose to do so, I can. Otherwise, I haven't really had the need to use it, but I'm transitioning to this bolt carrier on all of my AR-15s. I am quite happy with it. Rifle scopes. The rifle scope on this thing, still in the picture, still recording, imagine that. The rifle scope on this thing is a Vortex Razor Gen 3 1:10 by 24. It's generally a fairly short scope. I do have a sunshade attached to it. The way this rifle scope was set for me, I had a chance to go to Vortex, so at my request, they changed the parallax setting on this gun for me to 300 yards. And the reason is that I was running a little bit out of depth of field at longer distances, and I do take this gun and scope quite far away. And I found that by setting the parallax distance a little bit further out, I'm really not giving up much at closer distances. It's not perfectly focused at 50 yards on 10 power. I never need that. It's not a bench gun. When I'm at closer distances, I usually shoot on lower magnifications or shoot offhand. The mount is the 34mm Aadmount. You guys all know how fond I am of this mount. I have a bunch of these. None of them have ever shifted. Unfortunately, I don't think he's making them right now. I hope he will start again. If he does, I'm going to procure more of them. Auxiliary sights. As far as auxiliary sights go, I have this dual aperture sighting system here called Zero Bravo. And it basically works really well for me. All I need to do is turn the gun a little bit, and I'm looking through the aperture, and at closer distances, anything I see through the aperture is very hittable. Surprisingly quick. It's probably not as quick as a red dot sight, but in this case it's truly an auxiliary sight. I use the Razor Gen 3 on 1 power all the time. This does work wonderfully in a pinch. I don't think it's much slower than a red dot at all. What it is that it is absolutely unobtrusive and sticks out a lot less than any red dot that I've tried to mount, and I'm a lot less concerned about bumping this off zero. If I do bump it, somehow works really, really nicely for me. I know it looks like another cattail. This is the cattail, the magnification lever. It's not. There are 2 apertures in here. I'll take some pictures through the optic. On the front here, I have the flashlight laser combination from Crimson Trace. It's called CMR 301. The flashlight is here and the laser is here. And this is, I'm generally not real big on lasers on rifles. I don't do night vision too much, otherwise I'd do infrared laser and all sort of stuff. But in this case, since it is a true general purpose gun, this gives me a tertiary, meaning third, sighting system at close range. Have I ever used it after sighting in? Only for a little bit of practice. Honestly, not too much. I do like it. It has a pressure switch, and the way the CMR301 works, there is a selector here where I can select whether I want to deploy the flashlight or the laser, or the flashlight with the laser together, or for this whole thing to be off during storage. My default position for this is the flashlight. I've taken some rifle classes, and I've spent a good amount of time training with a flashlight. However, laser for me on this is truly a backup of a backup. For lack of a better word. But since I don't have a red dot sight here, since I have the dual aperture sights here, these are not awesome in low light. So if for whatever reason I don't want to deploy a flashlight in low light, but I do want to be able to aim, and the scope is for whatever reason not available to me, the laser does really nicely in low light, and in low light with the laser I can shoot pretty far out. The way this laser works during the daylight, depending on what color the target is you're looking at, it's a limited range engagement, although it does work. It's a nicely peppy laser. However, for nighttime use, 100 yards with this laser is perfectly doable, maybe even more. I haven't taken it beyond 100 yards. At this range where I shoot, the base where I'm allowed to do night shooting, I get about 70 yards. I think 70 yards is the most, so that's where I've done the bulk of my shooting. I've tested it to 100 yards, but without shooting. Okay, what else? That is largely it. The grip is from Hogue. I'm probably going to replace the grip. I have smallish hands, and I prefer the grips from a company called Reptilia that's a little bit shorter, and I think they're a little bit, they index my hand in exactly the right spot, exactly where I needed to. On the muzzle, since I don't run the suppressor here too much, what I have here is a linear compensator. This is one called JAL from AR-15 Performance. Why a linear comp? I shoot outdoors a lot, and when you shoot outdoors, the linear comp does not make the gun quieter, but it makes it quieter to the shooter. It is a little bit less concussive. Whether this linear comp does anything to mitigate recoil is very hard for me to say. I want to say it makes it softer, but I don't have a really good feel to evaluate it, so this is really a subjective assessment. However, it definitely makes it a little bit easier on a shooter when I shoot outdoors. Indoors, yeah, it's all the same thing. Like, for example, here right now, what I was doing here just a moment ago was sighting in the scope, making sure I'm sighted in dead on, and because it's so windy outside, we have a 100-yard tunnel here, so we're sighting it at 100 yards. Shooting indoors, with or without linear comp, I had plugs and ear muffs, right? So, because it does really get freakishly loud. Okay, that is largely it. The gun, as it weighs with the scope, is right around 9 pounds, so it's a little bit on the heavy side for a quote-unquote general purpose gun, but the scope is about 21 ounces. The mount, I think, is 8 with about 29 ounces. A few more ounces for the light, sling, and all that sort of stuff. It adds up. But I've got a 9-pound AR that is nicely maneuverable and fast, and I can use it for pretty much the effective range of the cartridge. Where I live, there's a little bit of an altitude, so Hornady's Super Performance ammo is supersonic past 900 yards. At this particular range, I think the furthest plate I have is 860 yards, I want to say. I don't remember for sure, I'll double check. But basically, I don't have to worry about anything going through a transonic region for any plate I have at this range. Out in the desert, I've taken it further out, and surprisingly so, I had decent stability through transonic range. I was able to take the gun a little bit further out, but 2 to 3 is not really a long-range cartridge, but with an accurate enough gun and a nice enough optic, you can press it in that service if you are so inclined. Anyway, if you guys have any questions about this particular build and any questions on the components and the choice of them. Oh, speaking of components, the trigger is a what one is it? Is it a Hyperfire? Yeah, this is a Hyperfire trigger. At some point I picked this up on a nice discount, and it's a really nice crisp pull, which I enjoy. But honestly, between good quality Geissele triggers, Hyperfire and trigger tack, there's not a huge amount of difference. Given a choice now, when I build new guns, I generally use a two-stage trigger tack trigger, but the hyper-fire button is gun is good enough where I don't really, I'm not really driven to go and change things out. I'm not really looking for that much uniformity. What I found is that as long as I'm using fairly decent triggers that are crisp enough transitioning from gun to gun, and going from trigger to trigger does not take me that much effort. So I'm not really looking to spend a lot of money to achieve perfect uniformity. That having been said, I recently got a chance to play with Timney's latest AR-15 trigger, and it was really quite amazing. If I switch a trigger, I might do that. We'll see. I don't know, time will tell. Now, once again, thank you for watching. If you have any questions about why I built this thing the way I did, a choice of components, or any of the more philosophical aspects of how to use an AR-15, please post a comment under the video. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.